All right. Well, welcome. We're so glad to see you. Before we get started, I wanted to take the chance to introduce myself. I'm Austin Westerfeld. I've met or been in contact with most of you, I guess, either behind a screen or in person. So I'm happy to see you've carved some time out of your day to join us. Um, I hope that you're excited to hear from our speakers today, as we have some great content for you. At the end of this presentation, we're going to have a Q&A session. So please submit your questions within the Q&A box at the bottom of the window. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. It's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. First, Mike Reynolds. Mike has been ideating on digital products for over 20 years. He's played a variety of roles over the course of his career, including leading product organization. He's an expert in product management, user experience, and product marketing. In 2014, he founded Innovatemap, a digital agency exclusively focused on product, and a little more to come on that in a bit. Next, Lacey Lavies. Lacey is a founding member of Innovatemap, who brings over a decade of product management expertise to guide clients. She's helped dozens of companies think through the right product to build, uncover the opportunities in their market, and influence their engineering and design teams. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike Reynolds, who will give you some background on Innovatemap and why we're here. So Mike, take it away.
Yeah, thanks for that, Austin. I'll just give some context to Innovatemap as well as product in general, and then look forward to handing over to our product management expert, Lacey, for some deeper content. Quick backdrop, Innovatemap, we're a digital product agency. As it says on the screen, we help companies of all sizes dream, design, and deliver to market winning digital products and services. And really any point of the life cycle, whether it be the ideation, the design of it, and then launching to market, our team of product experts will help our clients with that strategy. Ultimately, our value prop is you've built the right thing, and users want to use it and buyers want to buy it. We get that done through product excellence, as our firm is full of exclusively of product professionals, product managers, product marketers, and UX designers. In terms of who we work with or what we actually will often see, established companies really leaning into digital. Just here's a sampling of some of our clients. And really the strategy behind why they're leaning into digital, certainly been amplified as of late, but really the strategy has always been to, complement, differentiate, or transform your core business with some digital product play, whether that be a SaaS application, a mobile application, e-commerce, a highly functional website, and so forth. And Lacey will get into that in just a minute, but hopefully this gives you an idea of why someone would even think digital. Go to the next slide. So a little backdrop on product in general. As you think about, or as companies are thinking about, hey, we need a digital strategy, very often we see that they know it needs to be built. And having great engineering is absolutely table stakes. But what really will set a company apart is complementing that with strong competency in product. And what I mean by that, I've always described that, the product team of an organization is worried about, are we building the right thing? While the technology team is worried about, are we building the thing right? And while I mentioned that the engineering is table stakes, they're going to be focused, or typically focused on things like, is it architected well, stable, secure, integratable, scalable? While the product team is going to very much be worried about, is it valuable? Did I solve the problem I intended to solve? Is it marketable? And is it usable? And Lacey will dive into that and talk about that a little bit in more in depth. But that's really the function of a product organization. And as companies start to venture on digital for the first time, whether it be leaning on their IT organization or technology partner, questions start coming up, at least we see, of doing this well. And what does a product organization look like? And what is product? And really, that's kind of a bit of what we're going to try to accomplish here today. So things that we'll typically hear, in market, as well as, from clients, or even just in general networking from people who are venturing on their digital plays, things like, it's my first time assembling a product team. how do I build it out? Tell me more about what's the role, where do they fit into our life cycle? A lot of times it's a new competency or a transition. We may have historically been a services organization trying to productize what we do or complement our core service with productization. Or another one that we very often see is I've got familiarity to physical products, and I understand product management in that discipline, but I really would like to understand better the nuances that come in doing digital product management. And I'll just state that the differences are tremendous, and I hope that we get to touch on that in a valuable way for you today. So in terms of what Lacey's going to share is, what makes a winning digital product, product background and best practices as you are considering a product function for your digital strategy and potentially even building out that function. And with that, I'll hand it over to Lacey to cover this in more depth.
All right, thank you. I'm excited to be here today to talk more about products that I'm passionate about, so digital products and product management. And as Austin mentioned, I've been in digital product for about the past 10 plus years, which is a decade, which makes it sound or feel even longer, but I've seen a lot and I've learned a lot in terms of what goes into creating a product with staying power. And I'll give you a little bit of a hint that product management is a crucial ingredient to that. So I'm excited to share some of that with you today. So first, we're going to cover some background on digital products. We'll talk about what makes a great product, and then really dig into the evolution of the process and the people involved. And of course, focusing around that product management function. And then to cap it off, we'll leave you with some tips to keep top of mind. All right, so first, let's lay some foundation around digital products. A digital product is really any software-enabled product that provides value to its users. And we really think of these as apps, a web app, a mobile app, a portal, or software that supports hardware. So one of, I think, the easiest examples here for me personally is I have Philips Hue light bulbs in my house, and it comes along with an app to control them. First of all, if you don't have those, look into it. It's kind of life-changing. So there's a little plug for Philips, but yeah, we see that a lot more often lately with software supporting the hardware in our home, and especially like IoT or smart home devices. All right, so over the past decade, some trends that have really become foundational in this space of digital products center around cloud software, agile methodologies, and user experience. So we're going to talk a little bit about each of these. So cloud software really gives you the power to continuously update your software without disrupting your users. Now, updates or new versions can be easily deployed, and users can automatically receive updates. So we're all very familiar with this and how it happens on the devices on our phone. And it's become kind of the new way to deploy and get that valuable software to your users. So Agile is a big one, and this really changed my world in the best way as a product manager. And I'm not gonna lie, it was very hard at first, but it has really changed the game in terms of the process that people go through to bring a product to life, and it has stuck around for good reason. So Agile gives you that ability for your product to respond to customer needs. So you don't have to wait for the next version in order to make it better or to add something that has come up as important. And if you think about the day and age that we're living in right now, I mean, how many changes have you seen to some of the solutions that you're using to help adapt to our new ways of working? So it can be very powerful. And finally, user experience. So this one, it's near and dear, and we're going to talk about this one quite a bit today. But amazing user experience is really table stakes now. We all have smartphones, and we got spoiled by consumer apps. And so now people see an app and they just expect it to be super easy to use, and they want it to be more delightful. They want it to be like the apps on their phones. We hear that a lot as people come to us. They get inspired by some of these new ways of doing things, and thinking about how that can apply to maybe an older style that they're currently dealing with. So design thinking and that user-centric design, these are not trends. They are the way of approaching software design and really design in general these days. And it's really important that you deeply understand and think like your users in order to design the correct experience for them. So if your software doesn't have a great user experience, you risk people leaving. And sometimes that's to a competitor whose features might not really stack up against yours, but if the experience is better, people feel like the product is better. So this one's really important to keep in mind and has really had a great impact on our expectations. So we've covered some of those key trends that have become foundational for digital products. Now we want to talk about what makes products great. And I like to think about this as like, what is it behind the products that we love and why do we love them? So we think we've cracked that code. But first, a little quiz. So if you've seen the Field of Dreams movie, and hopefully you have because it's great and it's not that old. You know the saying, if you build it, they will come. Well, the same is unfortunately not true for digital products. So you can build it, but if you aren't stacking up in some key areas, they're definitely not going to come. So pay attention during this part. We believe great product is valuable, usable, and marketable. Now, these first two really evolve around ensuring that the product resonates with your users, while this marketable component ensures that it resonates with buyers and those who influence that buying decision. So we're going to talk about each of these briefly. Great products are valuable. It solves a problem. People don't want to be without it. It makes your life easier, and it's of high quality. So if you can think about a product in your life that is truly valuable, one that comes to mind for me is TurboTax or QuickBooks. If you think about small businesses running their business on QuickBooks, solves their problem. They certainly don't want to be without it. It makes their life much easier. And it's definitely of high quality. And this is one of those things that Mike touched on, that it's table stakes for your software to be built well. I recently came across some marketing on a website for a product that said, "It just works." And I thought, well, that's interesting. Of course it should work. Why is that on your website? So that is table stakes. But of course the value is very important here. Then on to usable. It's intuitive. You can learn and adopt it easily and ideally without training. And that can be like a hard thing to think about, but it is possible. Like if you've always had to train your users, it's not necessarily a requirement anymore if you have well-designed software. Your organization can easily adopt it. It's not frustrating to use, and it really feels like it's designed for me. So I like to think about that, like just the feeling you get when you're using a software. Maybe it's even new to you and you're trying to figure something out that you haven't done before, and you just do it. It takes no time at all. You just figure it out in a snap. That's usable software. That's delightful. And really kind of thinking about the inverse here is also an effective way to make the point. It was really last year that I went through this, but I was registering my son for T-ball and registering him for school. He started kindergarten, and holy cow, like, why did it have to be so hard? So those are the experiences where it like smacks you in the face, like, God, they need some usability here. So second point, usable. And finally, it's marketable. So this is really a piece where great products often falter. If this piece isn't met, the product is not going to last long in the market. So it must resonate with the buyer and the user. It should demo well or be portrayed so well on your site or in an app store that you don't need a demo. It has that wow factor and it captures attention. It's priced appropriately and it sells. And another point here is that your team can sell it and they can easily explain the value. And that is, I cannot understate how important that is, or overstate, I suppose. Remember these. they matter. Great products are valuable, usable, and marketable. And with all three, that's kind of where the magic happens. Okay, so now we understand the essence of a great product and why we love the products that we love. So let's transition to the how and the who behind bringing a product to life. And we're going to talk about the product process and the players of the past and today. So we're going to start with a look back. So in the past, we followed a very linear process to build product. It was somewhat of an assembly line method where each phase was generally being worked pretty discreetly and then handed off to the next phase and often to another team or business unit. So we went from idea to definition, and this sometimes had a product manager involved, sometimes not. To build, obviously we need that part, got to build the product. We tested it very rigorously, and then it was released to market. And maybe, just maybe, we would come back and improve upon it after it had been released to the world. Now, the players in this process, they map pretty discreetly to the phases. So we had the business who was generally coming up with the idea and the vision behind it. A product manager was focused then on the definition of the product, pre-build. So I know in my personal world, this meant hundreds of pages of documentation and thinking through every possible situation that your product could encounter. And really setting engineering up so that they could just go heads down and build it. And changes midstream were very challenging to the team and the process and to my friendships with my engineering counterparts. They did not like change. It was not welcome, and it was like you knew you were doing the right thing and you knew you needed to make a change, but it was like this Herculean effort to make that happen after the wheels started turning. So engineering obviously was responsible for building the requirements. There was pretty little collaboration at that point, as I mentioned, once they got started. And then of course, we tested. Once it got to the release phase, sales and marketing were figuring out and further aligning on who would use it and who would buy it. And how to talk about it externally, creating pricing and packaging and so forth. So some of these pieces you'll see still ring pretty true today. And then evolve, you'll notice there's no real owner there. And I think that was kind of part of the problem of why we often would put something out into market and not iterate on it. We would move on to the next idea and be running through this process and kind of losing sight of what we had already released. So we'll see how recent product trends have really evolved this process and especially the product management function. Take a quick drink here. All right, so software today is cloud-based and can and must respond to those changing needs. So that's really a benefit that we have and a responsibility that we have. And that linear process really evolved into something much more cyclical. We have specialized roles that emerged, and product management became a much more central function through the process. So first we're going to look at how that process has changed, and then we're going to talk about the players and finally dive in to what product managers do within each of those phases. So the modern product process is a cyclical one that doesn't end. So we have strategy and vision. We develop concepts to help to articulate that vision and bring it to life. We develop the product, we make it available, and we evolve it. And this process continues. So you get that wheel going and you really just don't stop. The important note here is that several of these cycles could be happening at the same time within your organization. So it's not like a one and done. We kind of have this going on in multiple areas at the same time. And things from small initiatives to large follow this similar process. So to support this process and really optimize for that environment that we're now able to work in, new specialized roles emerged. And you'll notice that some of these stay pretty consistent. business, engineering, marketing and sales, and even product management if that function existed. But their roles and responsibilities have really changed and shifted as other kind of specialized roles emerged. So we'll see product management here at the center. It really did become a central function, coordinating, collaborating, and aligning with teams across all of these business areas, and really becoming deeply involved in all parts of the process. So we're going to talk about real high-level responsibilities of each of these groups before we dive into product management, into the details there. So the business, still responsible for defining that business vision and business goals, obviously. The product management team then is responsible for translating that business vision, that strategic vision, and carrying that into the product vision. And also for deeply understanding and communicating what is valued and what is needed, for prioritizing that correct feature set. So these two statements, they seem so light and airy, but there's so much weight and so much importance behind them. If you miss on these things, like, you don't have a very good product. So we'll dive into those in a little bit here. User experience. So this one we didn't really see a lot in the prior process. This has become a very important aspect to the product development and product process. So user experience is responsible for designing the product and really making sure that it's usable. So we talked about that in products that are great and products that we love. They have a very critical role in this process to make sure it's easy to use. Engineering, of course, is responsible for building that product right, building it well, and ensuring that it's scalable. Product marketing, this is another one of the kind of more specialized roles that has emerged. As the product iterates more and as we're releasing more to market more frequently, someone needs to be very deeply in touch with how this is impacting our marketing, and product marketing really takes a lot of responsibility there. So determining how to price, package, and convey the value of the product in a way that is really understood and that resonates. And those 2 points, understood and resonates, are so critical. And the product marketing and marketing organizations have the power of people with word skills and the ability to really translate what they're hearing about the product into something that does resonate. So very important there. And then, of course, marketing and sales are telling the world about it and selling it. And sometimes this can be a big update. Sometimes it's a smaller iteration, but they're all important nonetheless. So let's talk a little bit more about the typical product management activities and responsibilities in each stage. Really, what is a product manager doing during this process? And really how critical it is to be arm in arm with all of the different players on the team that we see here. And hopefully by the end, you're going to understand why product management is in the middle of this beautiful circle we have here. So to start, the product manager's role in the strategy phase, at its core, is to deeply understand the problem your product needs to solve. If you miss on this, nothing else matters. It's a really key point. It seems so easy, like, of course I understand what problem we're solving. Like, this is where you need to be so intimately familiar and just so kind of in touch at the core with your users, the problems they have, and the problems your product is solving for them. So it's also in this stage that, of course, we're working with stakeholders to establish product vision and goals, doing discovery and research. And again, that sounds like, yeah, of course we do that. Well, we want to make sure we're doing a few key things here. Again, defining and aligning on that problem to be solved, conducting user research, early and often to understand user needs. I cannot overstate this one either. We have to be deeply in touch with the people who are using the product. And then conducting competitive research to determine what else is out there and how we stack up Part of this is of course ideating on new features and prioritizing. Prioritizing for a product manager is like a way of life. You live your life by a backlog and prioritizing the most important thing. And we'll see that come up a few times here. And then really creating and socializing both like strategic long-term vision and short-term roadmaps and plans. And really having the ability to rally others around a vision and accurately represent the voice of your users are important here. Then we move to concepts, and this is really one of my personal favorite parts of the process and of my job, is getting to kind of work with the design team to bring something to life. At this point, we're really focused on what is the right product to build. So we've strategized, we've ideated, and at this point, we're bringing goals to the table. We're talking about who we're designing for and what they're trying to accomplish and some of those requirements. And it's here that we work with the UX team and the user experience team on the ideal user workflows. So what is the process in the product that we want to take people through that most quickly gets them to their end goal and helps them to accomplish the tasks that they need to accomplish? We work through things like information architecture, which is really about how the information is organized in the system. And this is another one that, like, when it's right, you don't notice it. And when it's wrong, it's really difficult. So I know internally sometimes we talk about Hulu, which I love, but their information architecture and just the usability of how things are nested is challenging sometimes. So that's a really important thing to be thinking about at this phase. My all-time favorite thing to do as part of being a product manager is to be part of that brainstorm design process. Back kind of in the old way, or the former process, I used to design screens, and I actually loved it. It was really fun for me. And then I met some UX designers and realized how terrible I was and how great it could be if someone who knew what they were really doing took the things that we had been brainstorming on and put them to print, how amazing it was. So I've since retired there, and now I only draw on whiteboards. So taking that design brainstorm and bringing it to life through the concept, this is a very critical piece here. So a vision, a concept, a picture, it's a socialization tool, it's a feedback tool. This is such an important part of the process in order to save you time and money and energy, and really to get some validation on what you're building, or figure out what's wrong with it before you spend a bunch of money and time from your development team in order to build that thing. So at this phase, we are connecting with users and stakeholders internally and customer care, and kind of getting everybody rallied around the concept, or not even rallied, but getting their feedback on it so that we can ensure that what we have planned is going in the right direction and will meet their needs before we spend a penny developing it. Speaking of development, this is another big phase for the product manager, and one where we've gotten a lot more deeply involved in the process. And one of the key things for a product manager in this phase is really to represent the customer, the heart and the voice of the user. And some people kind of like skim over this part when they're working with development and just kind of try to get to the details of what needs to be built. But what I've found is that developers are making just micro decisions all day long, and things that they're never going to ask you about. But if they can have the mind and the voice of their user in their head, they're going to think about their decisions differently and make better decisions for that product. Of course, we are prioritizing. I talked a lot about that. Always prioritizing the highest impact work, ensuring that the alignment of priorities are aligned to business goals. This one can get a little, like, you can lose touch of it sometimes. I know I've been in conversations with development teams about getting excited about how we're going to solve a problem. And we keep going and going and thinking of the one more thing and the one more thing of how we're going to solve that problem. And then we take a step back and we're like, all right, what problem are we trying to solve? Is this aligned to where we're going? All right, let's rewind a little here. I talked about conveying the voice of the user, but also conveying the vision for what we're building and the requirements, of course, to engineering. Making trade-off decisions or compromising. This one is an all day, every day kind of situation. And it seems like, oh man, I got the short end of the stick here as it's written. But this is really, like, really good things can happen here. And I've definitely had many situations where development would come up with a better solution, and a lot of times with a lot less effort for the same level of value. So that's always a win and something that I am very open to listening to. And of course, iterating to ensure that functionality works as intended for the user. And this one brings back a little bit of PTSD for me. When we would write specs back in the day and engineering would create it, and then as a product manager, I'm in there and I'm testing it. And it's like, well, shoot, that's not how that was supposed to work, or that doesn't feel right. And you go back to development and they said, well, it works as intended. And it's like, no, it doesn't. We have to do the right thing for the user. And in this updated process, I think it's just kind of inherent that sort of change will happen, and people are a lot more agreeable to making those updates. So it's very important. All right, the ever-present ongoing process of continuously releasing to the world means we are continually making new things available. So part of this is really making sure that we're conveying the value of the solution. And we talked a lot about product marketing in this phase and marketing as well, but their work is only as good as the inputs that we give. So if our inputs are bad, the outputs are not going to be that great. So it's really important to be able to convey that value. And as I think of myself as a baby product manager 10 years ago, all I knew how to do was explain how it worked and what it did. So I would talk about the features and the functions and what it, how it worked and what it did. And that's just not very compelling. And that's hard for marketing to work with, to turn it into something good that will resonate. So over time, of course, have learned the importance of expressing the value and explaining things with that kind of why behind it. So we want to convey the impact of what's coming and really digging into that why. Why does it matter? What value is it providing? And who does it benefit? And then how is that different from alternative solutions? We're often collaborating on packaging and pricing implications, and then really reviewing and helping to refine the messaging. And one thing I love about product marketers is they are so good with words. And I know that that's not one of my superpowers. So when I can, again, give inputs and something wonderful comes out on the other end, I'm so appreciative of them and their skills. All right, the last piece of the product process, the last piece of the circle. But remember, the circle doesn't end. So this just keeps going. But this piece is very important around evolving the product. So in this phase, we will monitor the analytics around what's happening with what we've put out there. So we've generally set goals for what we're trying to accomplish, and we can see how we're stacking up there. We're conducting user feedback conversations. So this is not something you just do at the beginning, and it's not something you just do at the end. It's a continuous conversation to get well-rounded inputs. So feedback, it's really one of those things, it's very tricky, and it's important to handle it with care. And the key is really not to react to everything right away, but to effectively respond and recognize the difference between urgent and important. and recognize the difference between something that applies to everyone versus just a few users. And really reading between the lines. So understanding as people give you feedback, what are they really trying to accomplish? And what is the motivation behind their request? This will help you to take the right action. And that last piece here is the key to the whole thing. If you don't take action, you're not evolving your product. So we need to make sure that we are following through on that and really refining what we put out into the world so that your product can really live its best life and solve the needs of those that it is serving. So as you can see, product management is really responsible for a lot. It's a really gratifying and rewarding role. You have a lot on your shoulders, but it is a wonderful kind of just teamwork aspect to this whole process that I know I love. And to kind of wrap up on this, I like to think of products kind of like babies, and you being the parent. And this is one case where being a helicopter parent is a good thing. Like, you want to know everything. You need to be super involved and get in there and get in their business and understand and influence kind of all of the working parts and the details here. So on that, we'll wrap up with a couple of things to keep top of mind. Is your product compelling to your target audience? Are the product strengths consistent with what's important to customers? Are we connecting with customers and getting relevant feedback? Again, so important. Have we made the product as easy to use as possible? And are we continuously kind of refining it to make that possible if we didn't hit it out of the park right away? Will this product succeed against the competition, both existing and emerging? Will people really buy this product? Not the one you have in your head or one that's, mocked up in concept somewhere, but the one that you actually built. And are we constantly improving the product? And improving doesn't always mean adding. It can sometimes mean taking away or simplifying a process. All right, so that's a lot. Lots of things to keep top of mind, lots of things to keep you up all night, just like your kids would. So with that, I'll turn it over to Austin.
Thanks, Lacey. So we'll go ahead and jump into Q&A. Just a reminder, I see some already have, but if you have a question to submit, just send it in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen of the Zoom window. So getting right into it, first question I see here. If my company has traditionally brought to market physical products, what is one of the things we should be conscientious of when bringing to market a digital product?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I think in that realm, it's such a shift from what used to be and had to be a waterfall process to make sure what you put out in the world was buttoned up and perfect. Like adjusting to that iterative process takes a little bit of time, but it is, I promise you, it's a good thing. So just ensure that you continuously iterate on that product and that it's not, you put it out there and then you move on to something else.
Great. Let's go. Second question here. How often do you see a product manager interacting and communicating with engineering?
All the time, all day, every day. They're like your best friend on Slack. Obviously, different organizations are set up differently, and sometimes you have a product manager and a product owner that is more closely in touch with the engineering team day to day. But I would say I would never be out of touch with the engineering team, even as a product manager with a product owner there to support me. I think it's so critical that you, again, kind of keep that voice of the customer and the priorities and the vision top of mind so that the decisions being made day to day are really good ones.
Great. So if you're building out a product organization what are the first hires you make, and at what level of experience?
And I don't mind
Sure.
jumping on that one real quick, Lacey. I think that's going to be very much dependent on your organization. I think is the higher, more senior product roles are typically strategy, vision, and working with the business more often than some of the more junior ones. Like a product owner is typically with engineering. So I think if you really think about the gap in your organization, it might be what you want to fill. So if your business is strong in vision and know what they want to be built, but you need someone to execute that vision, you might be seeking more of a product manager, product owner. If the opposite exists, you may have to hire someone who can fulfill that vision and strategy piece.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. How much time do you actually spend with users, and how much does the UX team do? Both? ?
How much well, I guess we can't ask for clarification, huh?
Yeah, so it's how much time do you, being product manager, spend with users versus how much time does the UX team, it looks like, and then both, yeah.
Yeah, so even when we are doing research like ahead of time, I like to be pretty involved, and I don't have to be at every conversation, and that's often where UX or the research team is maybe kind of getting that bulk of the feedback. But in terms of, I really just don't think you can make great decisions if you're not deeply in touch. So I would say often, and that's going to depend on what you're building. Like, is it a kind of a new area that you're not as comfortable making all of the decisions and having a real gut instinct on, or is it something that you have been around the block a few times and had some learnings on? But yeah, I would say maybe at least 20% of your time should be thinking about or talking to real users.
Let's see. What methods do you use to get the info you need to make decisions? What are the methods you're using?
Yeah, lots of them. So sometimes it is obviously user research. Sometimes it is validation of concepts with either stakeholders or customers or prospects. A lot of times we'll run ideas that we're thinking through by prospects as well as customers. Other information, to make decisions, that's such an open question. Stakeholders, subject matter experts, conversation, a lot of conversation. Like I would lean into the people aspect of it and getting true communication going so that you can really understand the context. Occasionally we'll use a survey, but that lacks a little bit of context. It really narrows you in on a certain area to get feedback on, but you miss then kind of that tertiary information that can be really effective in inspiring new ideas and just kind of clarifying the direction.
Oh, I like this one. What are some good resources or books to read on creating an organization with a highly iterative product team?
I'll speak up. One of my favorites is Inspired by Marty Kagan. It was written a while ago, but it still stands true as kind of the foundation. Really explain these functions: product management, UX, product marketing, engineering, how they all work well together, the various roles. That's a great place that I would recommend to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't remember if this one touches on the organization aspect of it, but I know as we were getting into Agile and into a more iterative process, there was a book called The Agile Samurai that I found super effective to help through that transition.
Awesome. So looks like last question. What are the benefits to outsourcing product management to an agency?
So we have actually heard this directly from several clients, and it's fresh thinking, unencumbered by history and by all of the reasons why you can't do something. So I think getting people to just kind of think outside the box in a way that you just might not be able to depending on how long you've been in the role and how much experience and like deeply ingrained knowledge and expectations that are in your head. I think that's one of the really great benefits of using an external agency.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd probably add to that as well, so definitely if there's a gap in an expertise you have, so if you don't have a full A caliber product team, product management of varying levels, product marketing, UX, a lot of times people look to partner on a component of that, or to make a dent in a product initiative where they almost need excellence in that excellence immediately. A lot of companies will choose to look for a partner in that way.
Awesome. So turn to the last slide for me, Lacey.
Sure.
So before we go, if you enjoyed the content of today's webinar, be sure to grab a copy of the Better Product Principles. You'll find insights on product management, UX design, product marketing, product brand, and more. So head over to betterproduct.community/book. Again, it's right at the bottom of that screen, betterproduct.community/book. And with that, keep an eye on your inboxes for a follow-up survey and materials. Thanks to everyone for joining and carving out a portion of your time to spend with us. And on behalf of the Innovatemap team, until next time.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.